How's it going, internets? I hope you're having a lovely day. It's that time again. It's time to get into some animation. It's time to get that imagination all cranked up to 11. Time to get into some creativity. It's time to get inspired. And today's inspiration comes from Hajime Sorayama. I believe that's how you say it. As usual, feel free to correct me down in the comments below. He is probably best known for... he did work with with Disney, and probably best known for his stuff with Aerosmith, or perhaps even Playboy. But check out his work. It's really great. I'll leave through a couple of images here so you guys can get a glimpse and a hint, a little taste, so you can go off and look for more, which I always link to in the description below. But yeah, he has this really unique style that he plays up a lot. Again, he can do straightforward work too, but always kind of this robotic and really shiny chrome element to all of his imagery that really is unique, and a style that pretty much, at least before him, was not really done, at least not to the level that he brought it up to. So definitely check out more from him. Like I said, you probably, if you've been around for a little while, are familiar with some of his Aerosmith cover that he did. Just Push Play, and a few others. So definitely check out more from him. Like I said, I love his unique imagination and his unique style and take and blending of fantasy with that high future and the really kind of 50s and 60s car chrome mentality on top of that as well. But I want to share a quote with you guys from him as well. It said, I do know that the greater the understanding and resonance I receive from other people, the more I can affirm myself as an artist. And this is something that we don't always talk about here, because I feel like a lot of creativity has to come from within, but it really helps for any sort of an artist to get feedback, whether it's positive or negative, good or bad. It's just to have your work kind of bounce off of something, whether it's other people or it's studios or whatever it may be. It's always a plus. So definitely share your stuff. It's something that I've brought up quite often here, that feel free down below in any of the comments to get a little visit from the foster kitty here, to share any of your work here, so that I can give you some feedback if you're looking for it, if you need some help, or if you have questions or any of that kind of stuff. Feel free to share all of the stuff that you guys create on a daily basis down below, so that I can keep you guys motivated and you can feel like there's that resonance and that kind of affirmation for yourself as a creative person. I really want to help do that for you guys. So please, down in the comments below, feel free to share anything that you guys are working on. And that being said, let's go ahead and get into some animation for today. This is the Frank character rig. It's a free rig you can grab over at Creative Crash, and I will link to it in the description below. If you're not familiar with what we'll be doing for the rest of the videos, we usually give ourselves 48 frames, give or take, and go off and find a rig that I've never used before. It's a free resource for you guys to play around with as well, and we kind of go from there. A little bit of over the shoulder, hang out with me while I animate, a little bit of instruction or guidance or talking through the process or some element relating to it. And the main goal is like we talked about a second ago, it's really encouraging you guys to go off and create your own stuff, and to use that imagination and use that style and that voice that's uniquely yours, and hopefully to inspire you guys each and every day. I really, in a strange way, I hope that you guys subscribe to the channel, even if you don't end up watching the videos, because I want this to inspire you, so that if you subscribe to the channel, you'll see each and every day I put up something new. And even if you don't watch it, maybe you'll just remember this talk at this time that we got to share, so that you guys can look through your feed of your subscriptions and see that there's a new thing every day. And even if that's just a reminder for you guys to go off and pursue your dreams, I hope that does that for you. So let's go ahead and do some animation. We were doing Jumpvember all month of November long, where we did a jump animation every day. I think I want to do a walk today, because we're starting to get into December, and I think January I might do some acting shots, and we'll do kind of flip-flop. We'll do like a walk month and then something different every other month, I think is how I'm going to play it. But we'll see. And again, with animation time, each and every day, it doesn't have to be a walk, but that usually tends to be what it is. So let's go ahead and set up our storytelling pose for the day. And I think we'll do a cycle. Just keep it something a little more straightforward for today. And I really like the aesthetic of this rig. I think it's an interesting rig. So let's go ahead and bring that in here. Bring that in here. And relax it a little bit. And let's see, what do we got here? I think we're going to use this one and this one as our spine. You kind of want to lay out how you're going to approach a spine. So we don't want to do each and every one of these cogs because they're probably going to play against each other. So we'll do this espina C and espina themselves. And this should be the root. We kind of want to puff the chest out a little bit more. Do more of that brute or hulking mentality here. And I think I want to drop the shoulders just a little bit. I feel a little forced up that much, at least with our chest pulled back. So let's drop them a little bit. And let's go ahead and push the hips down a little bit more. And let's pull the feet out just a little bit. And rotate them out a little bit as well. Pressed against the body. And let's see. Do a little bit of bend on these fingers here. And as you can tell, this isn't a English based setup for this rig. That's okay. Doesn't have to be. Just want to create an more interesting hand pose there if we can get one, which we can. Seems like this is a pretty well-made rig here. Bend in there, bring it out a little bit more. It's funny, it says corazon. Isn't that usually heart? And then this would be index and ring. And I know this is pinky, but I wonder what the actual translation is there. Let's bring the spread in a little bit more. Let me know down in the comments below if you know Minike. I'm sure I sound ridiculous saying that word, but let me know in the comments below. Happy to be proved wrong. I love that. Alright, just a little more interesting hand pose to start off with. And let's go into the other one here. Do a little bit of grip here. Pull that forward. Let's pull those in a little bit more together. There. Yeah, look at that thumb. Okay. And since it's a walk, let's get the little bit of distance in between the feet here to set it up. And actually, I think I want to do a little more of a hunch there. So instead of having it puffed out, I think I'm going to do a little bit of a hunch. Now let's offset it with the root controller here. Like that. Bring that out a little bit more. decent starting pose here. Let's bend that forward a little bit. And back, swing that back a little bit there. And bring this a little bit forward here. Get a little bit of bend in there. And a little bit of bend there. Maybe pull this foot back a little bit more, so our weight gets distributed a little better. Okay, it's fairly good. We can always tweak that later. So let's go ahead and save our file. We are using Autodesk Maya 2014 for today's video, and let's go ahead and set our frame range. We already did that. Make sure we just have our NURB curves, NURB surfaces, and polygons selected. Again, we'll select everything here, go to frame 0, and set our first key. And let's set up how the feet are going to work here. So let's go 12 frames forward. Bring that there. Set that. Let's go ahead and bring that back. Okay. And move those there. We just want to get the foundation down, which is really going to be the feet and the hips. And once we have those working, got a good bulk of where we want to go with the walk. So let's see. And again, this is more of a cycle like you'd see in game animation for what we're going to be doing for today. It's just so it's a looping thing so that you could have this work on top of a plane, and you could allow the player to manipulate it around a board or something like that. So it would be something that doesn't actually stick to the ground like you would see in more of a movie type animation where you would really want that foot to plant and stick on the ground. This is something that you want to be able so that we can grab this cog and move it around wherever we want and allow the animation to loop underneath. So it means there's a little bit of foot slippage, but I'm sure you guys already know that. But a little bit different type of a walk than maybe you'd see in like a 3D animated movie. And let's go ahead and do a little bit on the hips here. Let's grab the root controller. Go down to up on the passing position. Then we'll go back up. And again, we want it to loop, so we're going to end back up at the same place that we start. And go down, and back up, and down, and back up. I haven't done a walk for almost a month now. It's nice to get back into it. Feels like home. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our animation editor's graph editor. Look at our translate Y, and let's even that out a little bit more. Feels a little unnatural. And normally the hips would go up on the passing position, but it's okay. It's not like they can't go down on the passing position and walk. But this is more of a stylized walk than a super realistic kind of walk. Now let's go ahead and lock in all those steps again, and that way we can lift the foot up and really sell that there's more of steps going on, and it's not just sliding on the ground. So let's go in here to frame 6 here. I'm going to lift that up so we get that plant. And then again, we just want to lock in those main keys we already did here. We're doing kind of a base 12 walk. I think a normal human walk is usually 13 frames per step, but anywhere from kind of 11 to about 15, a 2 window is still fairly in the normal range. Usually humans go for about 13 frames per step. Like I said, it varies, and within 2 frames is pretty natural for variations to occur. That would still be not too much pushed for your timing of a walk. And let's just kind of even out those steps a little bit more. So go ahead and shift click both of those, And look at our translate Y's. That's the up and down on those steps, and make sure they're fairly even across the board. They don't have to be exact. We want a little bit of variation, but around the same height for each step. Okay, now let's go back to the hips here. And like I said, the hips and the feet are really the main important parts of a walk. The rest of it is still important for body mechanics, but once you have the hips and the feet really working, that's at least from what I found, the big important parts. So let's go ahead and see that now. Okay. And this way we get the weight over the planted foot by doing this. Let's go ahead and even that out so we're not favoring one side over the other, and probably scale it back a little as well. Let's go ahead and look at that now. Okay. And go ahead and save our file. And let's go ahead and do a little bit of rotation. So we can rotate to favor the front planted foot. Rotate that this way. And then we'll definitely offset what we do with the chest from what we're doing on the hips once we get to that point. But I kind of like to do a little bit of a straight ahead / layered approach to my animation. Let's kind of just hop right in there rather than a pose to pose approach where it would be we go in and we really lock down one particular key in a great pose, and then we go to our next pose in another strong, awesome pose. This is more of a kind of plowing straight through and then doing a little bit of a layered approach where we look at the feet, then we go through it all again, and we look at the hips, then we go through it all again, and we look at the chest, and all the while, still tweaking stuff if we need to along the way in other areas, but it allows us to make sure that we're hitting everything. And I find it's a fairly good workflow for kind of quicker animations, at least that I found that works for me. And I think we'll still pull that back a little bit more, but remember we're going to offset the chest here too, so let's see. And let's do a little bit of rotate over here, so that the hips would allow for that foot raise to go here, back again, and I'm sure we're going to tone that down even more. One good tip is it's always good to over-exaggerate and pull back rather than continue to push forward in baby steps, at least from what I've found, because once you get it working in an over-exaggerated way, you can always just pull it back and pull it back and pull it back, then going, is this exaggerated enough? Nah. Is this exaggerated enough? Nah. Is this exaggerated enough? Once you know that it's exaggerated and it is working, then you can just scale it back to the point, the amount that you want peppered in there. Okay, feels alright so far, so let's go ahead and look at the chest here. Yeah, we said we were going to work on the espinas, I believe, right? Let's grab both of those. And let's offset it, so do a little bit of rotate Y to favor this arm forward, since we're favoring the hips for that leg forward. And then we'll go to 12, swing it that way. 24, bring it there. 36, bring it that way. And then we'll go back to where we started here. So let's look at the rotate Y's. That's what we were doing here, and kind of even them out so we get a fair amount on either side. It's not just favoring the left side or the right side, but kind of going right down the middle there. And it's fine to favor one side or the other if that's a particular thing that you wanted to give that character, like they always favored their left side for some reason, if you have a storytelling reason to do that. But for most people, they're going to be fairly even on both sides of their body. And then let's go ahead and do a little bit of rotate Z here as well. And it looks like we might have toned down the hips a little too much on the rotate Z, because it feels like this is over exaggerated on the chest, so I might need to go back in and tweak the hips a little bit more. Okay, let's go ahead and look at that now. Yeah, still feels too over the top on the chest for the rotate Z, so let's amp up the hips, because that'll offset the chest rest a little bit more, but we can still get that side-to-side squish that I want to get in there. It might still be too over the top altogether, but okay. Now let's go back and tone it down a little bit more here. It's a little bit of give and take, a little bit more here, a little less there, until I find a good balance. Like I said, we over-exaggerate it so we know the movement's working. It's just finding the amount of the movement that we want in there. Okay. Feels like it's working alright. Let's go ahead and save that. And let's like swing at the bottom here. Let's rotate it forward. And back. And forward. And then go back to where we started there. And let's look at the other arm here. Bring that back. It has been a while since I did a walk. Can feel that it's been a month. I'm having to do a little more thinking for each part rather than having it come super, which is good. I'm glad that I wanted to mix it up with Jump Vember, because I felt like I was getting into a point where I was just doing too many walks and not enough focusing and tweaking timing and holds and anticipations and everything. So hopefully that'll help inform walks, and it's a good change of pace there too, because I'm excited to get back in and do some walks with you guys. Okay, I think overall I need to pull this shoulder a little bit further out, because it's intersecting with that thigh on that hand there. And same with this one, just a little bit further out on the so don't cut into the thigh there. Let's see what I got. 2.56, and on this one I got 3.3, so let's go about that same, maybe 3.2, a little less. Doesn't have to be super equal, but I kind of want that to feel fairly similar on both sides. That feels a little better. Okay, let's take another look at those feet. Yeah, let's drag that foot back there. Actually, maybe we'll do heel pivot on here instead of rotate. Normally I would do rotate, but I think I like the way this heel pivot's working a little bit more. Again, heel pivot there. Because the rotate's kind of not going with the way the heel's working, so it depends on how the rig's set up. Sometimes the rotate works better, sometimes there's a pivot that works better. You just gotta kind of tweak around. Each and every rig's gonna be different. So that's why I always challenge you guys, if you're playing around with animation, try kind of the stuff that I'm doing, where you just go, you know what, I've never used this rig before, it's going to offer me new challenges, and I'm not sure what they're going to be. So kind of go into rigs and play around, so you don't get, well, that's how this rig worked. This one's, and you go to a studio and you start playing around with their rigs, and it's totally different, and then you have to relearn. If you keep kind of a fresh perspective on rigs, then you get a really kind of you get so familiar with the different ways that the different rigs work that you kind of get these little systems of, okay, well, that doesn't work, so there should be this kind of an option. And every once in a while you'll come into a rig that's really got some broken stuff with it, and then there's not much you can do. But chances are, if you're working at a studio, either you're already an awesome rigger yourself, which chances are a lot of you are, but if you're not, there might be one there that can take some comments or some feedback from you as well, that you would be able to get there that you won't be able to get from working at home. So it's definitely something that I feel, especially in animation schools and stuff, doesn't get talked about enough. So that would be one thing that I would say would probably really go pretty far in helping you guys if you feel like you're getting a little stuck in your animation. Is to just go, you know what, go off and challenge yourself to animate a short with, a rig you've never used before, or even a rig you don't like. A lot of times, in more the art world, if you find that like you really suck at drawing feet, then you need to spend time drawing feet, because chances are that's a weak spot for you, rather than what a lot of people who are just getting into art or animation or whatever field, creative field you're working in, is when they find something difficult, they use really good shading to kind of offset that they can't really render the form correctly. But when what they really should be doing is working through those bad drawings and going to the point where you get past them. I know for myself that right now I feel like I don't always like doing this, but I'll try to be honest with you guys. I don't really feel like I'm at a good point with the drawing eyes as well as I would like to be. I feel like they tend to be a weaker spot in different perspectives and different angles. So I'm really pushing myself right now to study eyes a lot more than I have before. And I don't think I'm necessarily bad at it, but I know that's a part that I tend to spend more time on, and I'd like to at least get quicker with it. So rather than going, you know what, well, I'm just going to do really nice noses or something, or work on really good hand posing, it's like, no, this is a spot where I find like I'm weaker, I'm slower, or whatever, and that's a spot where you want to address that. And same goes in your animation. If you're finding that you really are no good at body mechanics, or you're really not good at acting shots, then push yourself to do more of those rather than shy away from them, so you can continue to grow all the time. Let's make sure that we seems like there's a little bit of hiccup there. I think it's in the shoulder though. So let's make sure we get that. There we go. See that? There's that little bit of click in there, as it was knocking from the end of the cycle to the beginning, so it feels a little better. Okay, let's go ahead and do some. I think we still want to hit up, do a little bit in the head, a little bit in the hands, a little bit more in breaking up the feet, and then maybe do a little bit of compression in the chest. I think once we hit that, we'll see where we need to go from there. But I think that's a good place to kind of look at. I always like to, don't always do it, but I try to have a good formula or formulae or good path of action for where I want to go with the shot or what I want to approach next. Sometimes you want to go with stuff blind. And another thing too, since for some reason I seem to be on a kick of talking about what to do if you kind of feel stuck or flat in your animation, is take a break, and maybe I'm not saying quit animating, I'm saying go animate something different. If you're stuck on a shot that is sucking and you can't figure out why, and you've spent a lot of time addressing it and it just isn't working or hitting that nerve that you want it to hit, go animate something else. And even if it's just for an hour, go off and do something different. And what it'll do is it'll give your brain a fresh look when you go back to your shot, an hour later or a week later or whatever it is. So you're not looking at the same thing from the same perspective over and over and over again, because you start to forget what it looks like. Which is weird, but you start to become blind to the problems that you've seen before, or just aren't seeing them. And that's another reason why I tend to try not to work to a camera in animation as well, which I think, to talk about the weakness of that, I think my posing isn't always as dynamic as it could be. But I like to be able to work in 3D space and not be subject to a particular camera. Now, that being said, if it was a shot that I was going to put on my demo reel, or something I was doing for a studio, I definitely would want to follow the direction and work from a camera. But for my own personal growth and stuff, I like to not work to too much of a locked off camera until maybe the last couple of passes that I'm going to do if I want to really push something a little bit more. Because I feel like if everything's working in this angle and I've only been working in this angle, I'm not going to be able to see stuff that I would see from here. Like, we need to do some stuff with the head because it's feeling too rigid from this angle, where over here it feels fairly animated enough. It's got some turns because of how the chest is doing and everything, so it might be something that I wouldn't necessarily address, where if I'm looking at it here, you're seeing nothing going on in the chin. It's pretty dead. So that's just an example, but you kind of get the idea here. So let's go ahead and do a little bit up there, a little bit there, a little bit up, a little bit down, a little bit up and down, up and down. Let's see. Maybe we'll tone that down a little bit here as well. Feels like it's a little over the top. There we go. So you get a little more looseness in that head. Okay, let's go ahead and save our file again. Let's break up the fingers a little bit here. And grab all of these here. I'm going to swing forward. Swing it back. Just so we get a little bit of drag in those fingers here. And we'll bring it forward. And then we'll go back to the pose that we started off with. Just so I get a little bit of drag and looseness in those fingers. Okay. And let's go ahead and drag our thumb a little bit here. Let's see, we want this guy there. Swing it out a little bit there. Drag it back there. Swing it out here. There we go. Okay, and then we'll take Corazon, first one, or what's that? Corazon lateral, which should be same as kind of a what they call it? I can't think of the name. A splay kind of a controller. Now push that forward a frame, so it happens one frame before the rest of the fingers. Kind of leads the movement. And we'll take, should be the Medicaid, probably saying that wrong, lateral, and we'll delay that one frame so we get a little bit of variation in our timing for our finger movements as well. Make sure that do duplicate that last frame so that we get a good we'll probably do that thing where I go off one frame, so we still get a little bit of movement, and we're not hitting a wall where we hit basically the same frame over and over again. So we don't get like a 2-frame hold there. But we'll save that here. Let's look at the other finger here. We'll do a little bit of drag there. It does seem like the indexed, or this would actually be the middle finger, kind of has a lock off for how far back it'll move, which is kind of weird. The other fingers don't seem to have that. I wonder what the thought process was there, or if that just was a little mistake that slipped through. But it does seem to see that that one has a specific point that it can go forward a bunch, but it can only go back so far. Or the other ones, you can kind of over-exaggerate them a little bit more. But overall, I really like this rig. I think it's got a unique style to it, and it seems to be pretty easy to get in there and tweak and pose without too much work. I always kind of feel that I'm drawn to more retro-looking rigs that highlight the polygonalness of them, which I'm sure is a wonderful word, polygonalness. Use it every day. Kids, enliven your vocabulary. Polygonosity. And we can go back to where we started. I think we could probably do a little more up and down here, so let's exaggerate the down here a little more. Yeah, let's see, do they have any facial controls here? Looks like it. Okay, this would be nose. Oho's eyes, right? So we could do a blink here. Let's go ahead and keep them open there. Do a blink there. Open there. Right there. And let's keep it closed for the 2 frames here. 16, 17, and 18. Usually like to do is do a little bit of an overshoot before I can get in there, but I don't know if you can go negative here, so let's see. It doesn't appear that you can, so I think what we'll do is go 10, keep that, and go 25, and keep that, and then we'll take our default neutral pose, and I'll go ahead and bring that down a little bit. So let's see that. So that way we can open them a little bit wider before they close. And that gives us that little bit of exaggerate there, and then a little bit of reset them. And let's wait about 2 more frames. So it's more in the middle of our shot, not exactly in the middle. It can favor the beginning of the loop. Let's see. Derecho is what? Left, and izquierda is right. So this must be Spanish. Sorpresa, maybe eyebrows. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So for our eyebrows, I think we're gonna go ahead and leave them where they are. A little bit up. A little bit down. Keep there. Keep there. A little bit up again. And back down again. And down again. Okay. Again, let's zero those out here. We're going to kind of do the similar thing we did here. So, we're going to give ourselves a little can go lower. And we can overshoot that, but only a little bit here. And we can go down on the blink. Probably wait. I have to leave that about a frame here. Doesn't have to be exactly on the timing of the blink, but right around it. Just so that the movement in the face, the eyebrows and the eyelids would be pretty similar for the timing and the movement direction and styling there. So let's see. Like I said, it's just a little bit of give in the eyebrows. So let's go ahead and look at that again a little bit more close up. See that little bit of raise on the eyebrow, the lower as it close, then raise up, and then settle. Again, it's pretty subtle, but it just helps keep the face together and make it a little more cohesive. So the eyes wouldn't just blink on their own, but you get a little bit of movement in the eyebrow that would go along with it. Should we do maybe a little bit of puff there? Maybe there would be one that's just a jaw controller. But it feels like there isn't. Let's see. I'm not a big fan of the happy there. I don't feel like that works very well. So I think I'll keep it where it is. This is, gonna guess sonriso would be corners of the mouth? Yeah. Okay. Again, let's make sure that we don't put those in. And this would probably be... I don't think those. It's like a pinch, I guess. Okay. There'd be a little bit of jaw, but don't see that controller here. So we'll go ahead and kind of leave it where it is. And I think I might tone down how much animation I have on the neck here as well. So let's just scale that back a little bit. Let's go look at it again. Feels a lot better. And then let's just do a little bit of compression in the chest. So it would be pull that back, pull it forward, pull that back, pull that forward, and then we'll even this out and offset it in the chest from what we have in the hips. We only want a little bit of this, but just so kind of gives a little bit of looseness to the belly, makes it a little more fleshy if we can do it right. And it's just a little bit of like compress and release in there. Excuse me, I got the hiccups today. I'm having the hiccups all day. And again, this one, I usually like to keep this fairly uniform because a lot of movement in here can be really distracting, and this is more of something that just adds that extra little dash and isn't necessarily needed, but I like to throw a little bit in. So grab a little bit of this here. Again, I'll just squeeze it forward there, pull it back, squeeze it forward there, pull it back, squeeze it forward there, pull it back, squeeze it forward there, and go back. And again, we really want to clean that up. We didn't do such a great job there of making this fairly even. And then we got to play that little bit of game of give and take between the hips and the chest until we find that sweet spot there that blends balance this movement fairly a little bit better, then I'm sure it's going to be when we play it now. But let's go, like, take a look at it. That's not too bad. See, it just adds that little bit of give in the belly where you see a little bit of squash in there. And it just helps to keep that feel a little more fleshy. And even though I kind of like the rigidity that this rig gives off, I like to keep some parts feel like they're not as rigid, so that way you have a little bit of contrast in your animation. And that's something that I don't really talk about a ton here, but contrast is a nice thing to have. So it's a concept that I would probably say we could put under the simplify and exaggerate category, and that would be you can't have everything going 100 miles an hour the whole time, meaning you can't have really over exaggerated. Well, you can, but I would say good animation knows when to exaggerate something and when to let something be kind of neutral, and that way you can have a contrast. You know, we've got kind of some bigger swinging arms and then more muted steps. We've got pretty exaggerated middle here, but kind of a neutral top of the chest here. So that way you get that little bit of contrast here, and not everything is really bouncy everywhere all the time. That gets a little too. It's like I like to think of it kind of in music terms of, if you hear dun 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 dun, that gets repetitive and that can get annoying. But if you're dun 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 dun, you know, that kind of play of highs and lows and a good balance in there of knowing when to hit something hard and when to hit something soft, and having, you know, not everything and use that in your timing. You know, we don't want everything to hit all at the same time. We don't want to hit it all at the same amount. Animation is very musical, actually. That's why a lot of early animation, if you look at a lot of early Disney animation especially, they did those silly symphonies. And the reason, I would say one of the reasons, at least as a student of animation, is I'm almost 100% positive you guys are great students of. It's a great thing to study, because you can see that their animation and their timing and their posing really went along with the music, and that's because animation is really musical. It's really probably one of the great art forms that blends music with imagery. You know, whether it's speech or, you know, I'm just looking at the shot we just did, and there's a nice dun 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 dun. You know, there's a nice beat underlying it, and I think that's another great tip too that I've probably talked about here before. But in any of my shots that I animate, I almost always make my own sound effects, at least in my head, to them, and that's how I usually will time out my shots. I'll be like, you know, what's the boom, 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 do, you know, like, or make sound effects to them of, and that gives you the timing. If you can do those sound effects along with your animation, it's going to help you know, okay, that's enough time to do the anticipation of the shot to the shooting of it, or whatever it is that you're doing. Or if you're pulling out a sword, you go shink. You know, if you can make that noise, you know, this long until you get that shink, and that's when you want to really hit that staccato note. But again, kind of rambling here, so I think that probably means that we're looking at wrapping it up for today. So let's take a look back at where we started. We were looking at Hajime Sorayama, and he said, I do know that the greater the understanding and resonance I receive from other people, the more I can affirm myself as an artist. And no matter how long you stay secluded from the world and study whatever creative medium you're a fan of, you really eventually got to go out there and interact with other people and share your work and learn from other people. I know times of great growth, at least with myself, even if it's not face to face, but reading a new book and getting a new perspective, watching a new there's great people on YouTube you can watch. You can watch Kevin Cross or Will Terry or Jersey Drozd or any of the animators animation mentor videos, or any of those. There's a ton of great Jazza, any of those people. Will Terrell, I could keep going on. You know, it doesn't necessarily always have to be face-to-face interaction, but getting other ideas and outside influences, and then maybe you don't agree with them, but at least it'll make you think about the things that you're creating and the things that you're doing a little bit, maybe even if it's just different or a different perspective. It's always going to help to affirm yourself and understand yourself as a creative person better, because you're going to know, well, I don't know if I agree with that theory, or I don't know if I would take that approach, or oh, that's something I've never tried before and it works great for me. So don't work in a vacuum. You know, always be looking for new ideas or new approaches or new mediums or new instruments to use, or any of that kind of stuff. And you guys are great. I love you lots. If you're watching this, you are the creative future. I totally believe in you. And I guess that'll wrap it up for today. Doing a walk. Whoop-hoo. We'll see you for some more animation tomorrow.